my core values are being thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent. And so my comparison needs to be, how much more thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent am I today than I was yesterday? How much more will I be in the future? Because I've done the work with a coach and really thought about this to say, what is most valuable to me? What am I optimizing for? And that is not always in line with other people.
This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners. Welcome back to another episode of the Business of Advice podcast. Today, we are thrilled to have with us a powerhouse in the world of leadership, productivity, and excellence, Mr. Ryan Hawk himself. Let me give you a little background. Ryan is the author of several best-selling books, including the smash hit, The Pursuit of Excellence, and his newest book, which I'll hold up here, The Score That Matters, is an incredible one you should pick up. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how I met Ryan, but he is the host of a podcast called The Learning Leader Show, which, if you're not listening to it, you should. It is labeled by Inc. magazine as one of the 5 podcasts that will make you a smarter leader. But I think what's more impressive is almost 600 episodes in now with just some incredible people he gets a chance to spend time with. So, Ryan, I enjoy you taking some time to join me on my podcast today, The Business of Advice.
Thank you, Cody, man. It's awesome to be with you. And I've appreciated your friendship and getting to know you over the past, I guess, year and a half now. It's funny how fast things go.
Yeah.
But thanks for having me, man. This is really cool.
Well, I'm glad we finally did it. To give a little background, and this is, I think, setting up why I wanted to have you on here. We were trying to do something here at Advisors Excel with Patrick Lencioni, and Patrick's a hard guy to get to commit to stuff. And he said, I can't make those dates work. But he's like, you know who you need to meet and have is Ryan, my friend Ryan Hawk. He's like, I always refer people to him if I can't do something. And so anytime Patrick Lencioni says, hey, you need to meet this person, I wanted to meet you. So I appreciate that connection. But maybe I'll start there. That was my intro to you. Then as I learned a little bit more about you, football background, where, I'll say a star high school quarterback that went on to play college, come from kind of a football family. Now you've built what is probably, Inc. magazine said one of the top 5, but legitimately one of the top podcasts in the world now. So maybe just walk us through journey from, pigskin to podcast.
Oh, thank you, man. I got super lucky that my parents chose to move to Centerville, Ohio when I was 5 or 6 years old. They moved because there was this great quarterback playing for a legendary coach here in Centerville, and that's Kirk Herbstreit, played for the legendary Bob Gregg. And so I give credit to my mom and my dad for thinking that there would maybe be a chance that my brothers and me would be football players. Fortunately, that came to fruition. I got to play for Coach Gregg. His final game coaching was my last game in high school.
Oh, wow.
Also legendary offense coordinator Ron Ullery. And I think those guys changed the arc of my life based on how tough they were on me, how demanding they were, how they believed in me, and how they pushed me to levels of performance that I didn't even think I was capable of. And so they really taught me the power of leadership. And so I think that set something off in me. I was lucky enough to go to play in college and get a scholarship and play a little bit after college. And if you fast forward from, as you mentioned, pigskin to podcast, I wanted to focus on leadership because I understood the power of it from them. In the corporate world, I went on to have a career in sales and then in sales leadership. And so after I earned my MBA, I wanted to go back to school to get some sort of a leadership PhD program. But I didn't love the process necessarily of earning my MBA. It took me 6 years. I needed to hire multiple tutors. I was working full-time while I got it. I was like, God, I don't know if I really want to go back to school. Even though my company reimbursed it where I was working, I didn't know if I wanted to go back to this formal style of education just to get a certificate to say that I got an MBA or I got a PhD. And so I thought, is there a way to create my own form of a leadership PhD program where I get to choose my own professors and I can ask them the questions that I want? And that's why 9+ years ago I started the Learning Leader Show, where I've now since had, as you mentioned, almost 600 of my own hand-chosen professors to learn from. And I've chosen to publish those conversations so that hopefully others could learn along with me. And now I never intended it to be my full-time work or to be my business, but fortunately, that has happened, and now it's what I get to do full-time.
So I want to ask you about, some of the leaders and the things that you've learned from them, because I tell people all the time, they'll say, man, I love the podcast. And I'm like, hey, I do it as much for me at this point as I do for, anyone else that's listening. I'm like, the amount of wisdom that I've been able to gain from it. Obviously, you're about 10 times ahead of me in where we're at on episodes. So I know you've been able to interview a ton. But before I even ask you that question, I don't even know how to ask this question exactly, but like, what has it taken? Like, not a lot of people have 600 episodes, right? I see all the work that has gone in, and I think we're at like 70 episodes, right? So it's like way ahead. Like, can you just talk about, I don't know if it's the work that's gone in, the consistency, like how you've been able to build that, and just any lessons you've learned along the way of like that consistency to get to where you're at today with that?
Yeah, I learned from Brian Koppelman when I was fortunate to meet with him in his office in New York City, and we recorded that one. And he said, if you chase your curiosity and obsessions with great rigor, the results could be something pretty cool. And so I think it starts with that, with chasing my curiosity and obsessions with great rigor. I'm obsessed with it. I'm deeply curious about people and find their stories fascinating. And so I think it's hard to get good at something if you don't have a deep obsession / passion and curiosity for it. Couple that with one of my 4 core values is consistency, being consistent. And so I've released an episode at least every Sunday night for 9+ years, and have never, ever missed. And, a lot of life has happened, children born, sicknesses, a pandemic, a lot of different things have happened in the midst of those 9 years. And so I have worked really hard to consistently get well ahead of schedule so that I am there for the people who choose to invest their most valuable resource with me, which is their time. And I think consistency also builds a deep level of trust. When you prove to people that you're going to show up for them, that you're going to be there for them, that you tell yourself the truth and you show up for yourself as well, that I think can really build trust. And then I just tried to steadily get better and better and better at the craft of interviewing, of guest selection, of being curious and interested, of being a good listener, of asking better follow-up questions and even initial questions. And by doing that, people seem to like it and they want to learn along with you. And so I've never really put myself in the position of being a teacher. I've really just been the learner the whole time. And I think people can identify with that. I think they can relate to that. And I think they like that. They like learning along with me. And if you sense from each of my conversations with people that there is a genuine curiosity and learning that is happening all the time. And the cool part about that is the business formation that has happened out of that, again, which was not my intention, is now I get paid to really share with others just what I've learned along the way. And so, yeah, I think the combination of curiosity, obsession, and consistency has led me to be able to really build a business off the back of a podcast.
Also helps that you have that incredible podcast voice. So that doesn't hurt. I think I texted you. I think it was the Jason Fried that you interviewed, and I texted you, and I'm like, man, you just got that great voice for a podcast. So,
I mean, there's by the way, a lot of luck a part of all of this stuff, and that's something that I certainly it's been commented on, but I've done nothing to deserve that, just like where I was born or who I was born to. Nothing to deserve that. But if you have some things that you are lucky to have, then make the good. Playing quarterback, it helps to have a voice. Jocko Willink and I talked a lot about that in his role as a Navy SEAL. You got to have some of those things that of course you did nothing to deserve, but you try your best to make the most of it.
It's and just even a few of the names we've mentioned already that you've had on. That's why I would tell everyone like they should go follow it. And in the one you did with Jason, which was just probably a couple episodes ago, wasn't too long ago, was incredible. So people need to go listen to that. So okay, so I'll bring it around to the original question I was going to ask. When you think of all of these great leaders that you've interviewed, interacted with, like give me the 2 or 3 commonalities that you see in the best leaders.
I think back to actually early on, I had a woman on named Kat Cole, and I think she defined a productive achiever, someone who sustains excellence really well. So I will borrow a bit from Kat and share kind of my thoughts on that. I think if you think of someone who sustains excellence, there's really 4 qualities that they seem to possess as I spanned across 600 people. On one, like, think of this equally balanced scale. On one side of the scale, these people have high levels of courage and confidence, right? Courage to stand up for what they believe in, confidence that has been built through creating evidence to themselves of doing hard things. So really, on one side of the balance, this scale, very courageous, very confident people. But then the other side of the scale, and it has to be equally balanced, it's high levels of curiosity and humility. Curiosity to ask questions, to seek knowledge, to try to get better and better and better by seeking that out from people who have accomplished big things. And then this humility to say, hey, I don't have it all figured out. I need your help. Like, I need a team. I need to be a part of it. Just like we were talking about before we recorded. Like, that's why we love team sports, right? This humility to show, like, I can't do this by myself. And so I found that people who seem to sustain excellence over time, when you look at that scale, have high levels of courage and confidence mixed equally with curiosity and humility.
That's good. One thing you also talk about is the idea of excellence, and it's just top of mind. I'm in this small mastermind group. There's 11 of us technically, but we were just together. Just got back from it a couple days ago. We'd spent a few days together, and Darren Hardy, who's a good friend of mine, is in the group with me, and he had on this kind of wristband that said excellence only. And we were just talking about, he's like, my theme this year has been like, everything I do, I want our team, everything just to be done with excellence. And I know your books talk a lot about that, this idea of just growing excellence within your organization, within your teams. When you think about that, how, and I'll go to this idea of continuous improvement that you talked about, like, how do you instill that in your team, this idea of like, we're going to be excellent and continue to improve and grow? Any practices that people can use there that you've seen?
It starts with yourself. So you can't demand or push people harder than you're willing to go yourself. So that starts with the smallest of details of caring about those things are really important. And this actually came from Michael Useem, who wrote, he's written a lot about leadership excellence, and he teaches. He actually taught one of my bosses, Dustin Kim, who I love her. She's one of my favorites. But Michael Useem said, expecting high performance is a prerequisite to its achievement among those who work with you. Your high standards and optimistic anticipations will not guarantee a favorable outcome, but their absence, right? Their absence will surely create the opposite. And going back to my high school coaches, Bob Gregg and Ron Ullery, they demanded us to perform at that level higher than we expected of ourselves every single day. So it's a combination of consistency and of pushing and of belief in other people. And it starts with you. And so whatever it is I'm going to do, deliver a keynote speech, run a leadership workshop, or go work with a leadership team, those around me, they're going to see it first and foremost that I'm going to demand that of myself and be upset with myself if I haven't used this skill of productive paranoia to be overly prepared for these big moments and then to perform with excellence. And so I love Pat Riley's definition of excellence too. It's the gradual result of always striving to do better. So to me, like, excellence needs to be a part of everything that we do. We have to be in pursuit of it. We have to value it. And then we have to get after it every day. And it's in the little things. It's in all of what we try to do. And to me, it's just like, as you could tell, it's just a never-ending thought on my mind.
I'm going to flip to the other side of excellence. I wrote this quote down in your book. You said, excellence is the pursuit of your personal best by maximizing the gifts you've been given. And I love that. There's a John Wooden quote very similar to that. It's like, judge yourself based on like what you did with the opportunities that you had. So I want to talk a little bit about the flip side of that, because you talk about this a lot too in the book. And I know a lot of your podcasts, you've touched on that. And it's I'm going to title it just as comparison and how damaging comparison can be. And let me preface it a little by saying, it's something I see all the time here at Advisors Excel. So we have what I think is the best collection of the like most elite financial advisors in the country, and like just achieving at these super high levels. And so I see all the time people will join here, not maybe where they want to be. Their business is stuck. They're not growing. They see all these other advisors achieving at these super high levels, and they start to grow and achieve more, but I don't know how to say it other than they'll always compare themselves to where, like, I use Joel. Joel was our number one advisor last year, and they're like, man, it looks so much better, so much easier for him. They don't see, like, all the steps Joel went through, right? I always say that. You're just seeing the front of stage. You don't see all the backstage stuff that went on. But can you maybe just talk about how you have to keep that comparison enemy, kind of squashed a little as you're pursuing excellence? Because I think it can be damaging in a way also.
I think this starts, out of having a foundation of understanding your own core values. There's this great quote from Lawrence Yao about envy, and it sounds like you're describing envy. And he says, envy is inversely correlated with self-examination. The less you know yourself, the more you look to others to get an idea of your worth. But the more you delve into who you are, the less you seek from others, and the disillusion of envy begins. So I think there's more envy and jealousy from people who have not done the work on themselves to truly know who they are, their core values, the critical behaviors to match those values. Because if you do that work, then you could understand, like, maybe we're not optimizing for the same things, or your values are different than mine. And that's fine. But to me, my core values are being thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent. And so my comparison needs to be, how much more thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent am I today than I was yesterday? How much more will I be in the future? Because I've done the work with a coach and really thought about this to say, what is most valuable to me? What am I optimizing for? And that is not always in line with other people. And so I'm certainly human and see pictures on Instagram of people on these amazing vacations or on these giant stages with 20,000 people in the audience and think, oh yeah, that looks amazing, right? But then I think I got to get back to what are my values? What am I trying to do? What am I optimizing for? And it's not always in alignment with those pictures that make me envious temporarily. So I think it starts within. I mean, that's what the Score That Matters is all about, right? It starts with your own internal scoreboard and knowing what your values are and your foundation and what you're striving for. And if you haven't done that work, it's so much easier to be envious and look outside because you haven't done the necessary work inside. But this is hard, man. I think being jealous and envious are natural tendencies of people if we're not intentional enough about doing the work on ourselves.
One of the things that you said there that I've seen that's helped, I would say a lot, is what we found, and we really did this kind of like during COVID. We had some downtime, obviously, like everybody, and we're able to spend some time on this. Is, where I found advisors would struggle is when they were exactly what you just said. They're trying to be something that wasn't natural to who they are. And what we ended up finding is that advisors, there's typically like 3 types of businesses they build. We ended up calling them optimize, which is more, they just want to be the lead advisor. They love meeting with people. The middle one we call scale. And then at the other level, we would call CEO, which is where, like, you're growing into a role where, you're building a big team, you're acting as a CEO. And where I think I saw a lot of people's struggles where what they really at their core wanted to be was like an optimized practice or build that, but they felt like we're supposed to be a CEO and they didn't really love managing people. It was just, that's where they got in. So even seeing that of helping the advisor identify, like, hey, be true to who you are and what you want to build, takes so much of that off the table.
Really cool. To jump in on that, I think that's really astute by you, Cody, because it shows you're doing the work on understanding what you want, right? And a lot of us, if we're not careful, we just kind of trudge along to the next thing. We look around like, oh, I guess I should just do that. But really, what you should do is pause for a second and say, wait, what actually do I want to do?
Yeah.
What am I trying to build? Because if we're not careful, we'll start climbing the wrong mountain. You realize you can get pretty far up it, and you realize this is actually not the mountain I wanted to climb. This is not what I was trying to do, and you don't realize it. So I think that's why it's really important to do the work on the front end to understand what are you trying to optimize for, what do you actually want to do, instead of just looking out and saying, oh, that looks cool, I just want to do that. Well, maybe you don't, but it's neat that you've done that work to help others understand that.
A story that I think I'll ask you to tell that I loved, and I'll throw out. It's where you were caddying for your brother in the Pro-Am, and you were playing with Rob Riggle. I'll throw it out since he's a pretty famous Kansas guy too, So, but you shared the advice that his caddy or fiance gave him in the book, which I think aligns with this, right? Of just like being true to who you are. Can you share that story? Just because I highlighted that. I'm like, man, this is good advice.
I was DMing with Cass, his caddy, about this recently because we're going to see her and Rob next month out in Tahoe, and I'm pumped to see them. They're just amazing people. But anyway, my brother and I have gone to Lake Tahoe to play in the celebrity golf tournament. I caddy for him, and he plays, and we've done it for I think like 15, 16 years. I don't know however many. It's been a while. And last year we're playing, and we're paired up with Rob Riggle and his caddy, Cass, who I later found out was his girlfriend, fiance. And I noticed that when AJ, my brother, would swing, and he is a violent striker of the golf ball. His swing speed is probably as fast as anybody that swings a golf club. He's very strong, and he hits the ball very far. Not always as straight as we want it, but he crushes it. He's won multiple long drive contests out in Tahoe. But anyway, he's swinging, and the crowd kind of goes wild when they watch him swing because it's this violent, attacking of the golf ball. And Cass would do this kind of aggressive two-finger point to Rob to say, look at me, don't look at him. And I noticed her doing it on a couple holes. And so finally, after I think it was like the 9th hole, we're walking down the fairway, and I said, hey, I noticed you looking at Rob, telling him not to watch AJ swing. What's the deal with that? Why do you do that? And she said, Rob and anybody will naturally speed up their swing subconsciously without even realizing it because he's watching somebody swing so hard. And if he does that, it will get him off his alignment, and he'll start spraying the ball everywhere, and that's not good for his game. AJ's a professional athlete. Rob is athletic, but he's not like that, and he's a bit older than him. If he starts doing that, it will just go bad in all different ways. And so what she said to me was, you need to focus on your swing. And I said, well, you're a golfer. What do you do when other people are swinging or playing golf? She's like, I either talk to my caddy or I look straight down the fairway. And I thought that's interesting. And she's like, you got to focus on your swing. You got to focus on what you're doing, not watching the other person swing. Because if you do that, you will mimic it without even realizing it, and that will lead to bad things. And I thought, what an amazing metaphor for life is that we got to focus on our own swing, as if we get too caught up focusing on others, we might not even fully realize our behaviors will change, which will then cause us to go in a direction that potentially we don't want. And so I just thought that illustrated it really well, and I never seen somebody do that before, because it's entertaining to watch somebody swing really hard at a golf ball. And she was making sure, like, hey, focus on me, focus on you, let's do your thing to make sure we stay on track.
Well, it goes back to what we were just talking about trying to be true to who you are, right? And I think probably why it resonated with me is I'm sitting there thinking about, man, when you golf with someone, you see them swing hard. I'm like, I step up and I try and swing harder,
100%.
And it's
we all do it.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm like, it is a great story. So, hey, you have talked some already about this idea of like core values, and I think most people have heard this idea of like you want these core values. Another thing that you talk about is this imagery around your ethos, and yours was the hawk, the edge, and the stairs, which I love that, right? I mean, we've done some stuff around like a family crest and that, but like this idea of an ethos in these images was really cool. Would you share kind of just the idea behind that?
Sure. I love bringing ideas to life. I think imagery is really powerful. When I give keynote speeches, I usually will share slides with images to reinforce what I'm saying. Not necessarily words, but pictures. And so this ethos exercise that Brooke Cups and I do really brings values to life, and it also can be illuminating for others to understand what's important to you. So the hawk, the edge, and the stairs for me are what I've chosen as the visuals to bring me to life, to understand what I'm about. And so the hawk, if you study hawks, which it's my last name, and so it's funny, as I was growing up, my dad, who led 1,000-person sales forces, would get gifts from time to time from people who worked for him. And sometimes they would be like these hawks, like an actual stuffed hawk to put on his desk. And so in our room above our garage, which is kind of a spare room, there was hawks just kind of all over the place. And so I got kind of curious, what is a hawk all about? Like what type of bird is a hawk? And so if you actually study them, they're really cool. They have 8 times better eyesight than humans, right? So that's wild. So they have amazing eyesight. So they're always scanning. They're really visual creatures. They're looking around for great opportunities. And so what they do is they glide up high, and they're scanning, looking for great opportunities. But then once they make a decision, they're known to aggressively attack. And so they're very visual. They're a professional noticer of things, but then once they commit to something, they go and give it everything they got. So for me, that I identify with that because I have to be very visual. I have to be very aware. I need to seek out opportunities. But then once I make a decision, I need to aggressively commit to whatever that decision is, right? So that's a hawk. The edge stands for I need to be pushing my edges. This is from the Navy SEALs. They talk about this a lot. Like, what do they look for in a SEAL? Someone who's pushing their edges. Someone both physically and mentally are pushing themselves beyond their current zone of comfort and competency. So I need to be always looking for opportunities that will stretch me, that will push me. Participating in a triathlon, going to improv class, right? Learning a musical instrument, whatever these things may be, they are pushing my edges. Interviewing Tony Robbins, right? Like these types of things are pushing my edges because they're currently outside of my current comfort and competency zone. And then the third one are the stairs. I was at a volleyball tournament, much like you go to all the time, right, with your daughter. The one in Orlando in June, you've probably been to this exact same tournament as me, the AAU Nationals. And as I walk outside of the convention center where all the courts are, right? This is a place with a lot of very tall, very athletic people who certainly have working legs. But you look, and side by side, I've taken pictures of this every year that I go and send it to Brooke and my friends. You'll see the escalators, and then you'll see the stairs. And the escalators are full of people, again, very capable, athletic people, just standing, looking at their phones on the escalator. And you look at the stairs, and they're almost always completely empty. And so the stairs are for me to say, choose to do the harder thing. I need to prepare myself to be able to handle the inevitable adversity that will strike by choosing the harder path. That choice is preparing me for whatever adversity strikes. Now, it's actually not hard at all to walk up the stairs, but it is a little bit harder to walk up the stairs than it is to take the escalator. And so I want to be priming my body, preparing myself mentally and physically to be able to handle whatever I'm going to face. And I think regularly choosing the harder path will better prepare me to do harder things in the future, or to be able to respond to the adversity that's going to strike. And so that's why the hawk, the edge, and the stairs are a part of my ethos. And I think you, just knowing that, you understand me a bit better as a person and as a leader. And this is why this is an exercise I run when I work with leaders, because we've had people who've worked together for 20, 30 years. And I'll say, okay, we're going to do this ethos exercise. Here's mine. And I go through that whole spiel that I just did. And then I say, now you're going to do yours. And they do theirs. And sometimes they even build little PowerPoint presentations with the pictures. And then they walk through why these images are important to them and why they're meaningful to them. And people say, I had no idea that you were about that, or that was important to you, or that would be an image to bring you to life. No idea. And so it can be really, it can help bring people together. It can also help people understand each other better. And most importantly, I think it helps you understand yourself better by really sitting down and thinking, what am I all about? What images bring me to life? And so I first encourage leaders to do this ethos exercise, because I think you'll learn more about yourself. You get the thoughts and ideas out of your head onto the page, and it brings it to life for others to learn more about you. So it's a great kind of team building exercise, both starting with yourself and then for your team. So I encourage people to do this, like when they have offsites or any type of meeting with their team. It can be a fun exercise to go through.
Yeah, I love the imagery. How do you use that then? I mean, do you have stuff made up? Like, do you have it around the house? Are you talking to the kids about it?
Sure.
I was more curious about that. So.
Yeah, I mean, my kids just want to make fun of me all the time. They're at that age, which I'm sure you have that as well. But you know, every once in a while, they understand the impact that we're having on people's lives, and I think they think it's pretty cool. Or other people will tell them that. But yeah, I think you can use that anywhere. You could share. I mean, we put it in our book. We share it with keynotes. We go to do it with offsites, and then people actually that I've done it with have it hanging up like their ethos in their office. And sometimes they have a new employee or a new person they're working with or a new boss. They'll bring it and say, hey, I think, you know, might be a good use of 20 minutes of our time. This is kind of what I'm about. This is what you're getting as a leader. And that's one of the coolest parts too, is the follow-up emails from people who do the ethos exercise, maybe with their team or somebody new, to say, wow, we really got to know each other pretty quickly just by doing this one exercise.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a little different than I'd read, and I really liked it. So, okay, one other thing I want to talk about and then we'll transition to a few other things is I think this goes back to leadership, but you talk a lot about the idea of who you spend your time with, and not necessarily a new concept, you know, but one of our, I think, founding core principles here when we started the company was we're going to surround ourselves with the best. One of the things you talk about is this idea of the people that are ahead of you, the people that are beside you, and the people that are behind you. Will you talk about just how important, like, who you spend your time is, or who you spend time with is, which people who listen to this have heard that before probably, but then I think also just those kind of three categories and like processing that and who those are in your life also.
Yeah, this started with episode 216, Jim Collins, one of my leadership heroes. And I was very nervous, and I was talking really fast about my why and what I was doing with the business I was trying to build and how I was going about it. And I was going on and on, you know, real fast. And Jim's like, whoa, calm down, dude. The single greatest determining factor in your long-term success or failure will be your who. Who will be your friends? Who will be your business partners? Who will be your spouse, right? Who will you intentionally choose to be around? That's what you need to really focus on first. And so I realized that time that that just kind of happened. I had pretty good friends, pretty good people I was talking to at work, but I hadn't been as intentional as I needed to be. And so the intentionality became these three buckets of people: ahead of me, beside me, and behind me. And so the ahead of me who are the people who have done what I want to do? And more importantly, though, they've done it in a way in which I deeply admire, right? Not just what they've accomplished, but they've done it in a way that it's like, I love the way they go about it, right? So who's ahead of me? And I like to rank those relationships, a 1 to 5. A 5 is somebody who has regularly scheduled time that I talk with. A 1 is aspirational, somebody I'd like to talk with, but I haven't yet, right? And then anything in between. Beside, these are people that are probably on a similar path to me, going in a similar direction, but really two rules for the people beside you. 1, no judgment zone. So these are people you can call and say, God, I really messed this thing up. What should I do? What do you think about this, right? And they're not going to judge you, right? They're going to approach you with curiosity, ask questions, and try to help you. 2, you are both genuinely rooting for each other to do well. Not the friend who's secretly envious or jealous of you or you jealous of them. You're both pumped when it goes well for the other, right? If someone's secretly a little bit envious, there's place for that, right? That's a normal human behavior, but that's not what this is about. They are excited for you when it goes well, right? Those are the two things with beside. Again, rate them 1 to 5. And then behind, who are you teaching? Who are you helping? Again, 2 reasons why I think this is useful. 1, it's just the right thing to do. It's the right thing to help others who are not as far along as you are, right? It feels really good, and it makes the world better. 2, I think teaching is one of the greatest tools in the world for learning. I mean, you know this. You're teaching all the time, right? When you are put in the position to teach somebody else, whether you're guest lecturing at a university, you're writing things down, you're meeting with a mentee, when you're teaching somebody else, you got to get really clear on what you believe, on what you're all about, on what you think, hopefully because you're trying to provide value to that person. And so that act of teaching really enforces clarity of thought. And I think leaders, good ones at least, need to be very clear thinkers, and one of the best ways to do that is to put yourself in the position to teach. So that's where the buckets come from: ahead, beside, behind. Rate those levels of your relationships, and then the ones who are the aspirational ones, take the next step, take action on that, and try to turn those into level 5 relationships. And I think if you do that, and then we talk 6 months from now, I think you're going to be in a much better position.
Yeah, if there's one big takeaway, I think people, when you hear that, it's like, go do that evaluation, right? Don't just hear that, let it go in and go out, and say, like, go sit down and say, who are those people in my life right now, and where are they on a scale of 1 to 5, and who's that one that I want to turn into a 5? So we were talking a little bit before, you know, for me, especially that ahead, John Maxwell's been that for like the last 3 years of my life. You know, someone I had admired and read, and then have got a chance to spend a lot of time with him, and say it's always great when you meet your heroes and they actually are who you think they are. You know, that's not always the case. I've had some of those where it's not the situation,
Yep.
but he is that. And I've told everyone, like, when I look at the type of leader, father, husband, friend that I want to be, like that, you know, he epitomizes that. So great one to evaluate. Something that hit me, you know, you were talking a lot about consistency earlier. I remember one of the things I read in the book, you talk about your brother and how consistent he would be. Like, no matter what, he got up every morning and worked out, right? It was like, didn't matter. Obviously, he's now built a pretty successful show that's on ESPN. How much of your both of your successes, like, how much was that you two are like beside each other, pushing each other, and that consistency obviously is a common trait. Even seeing you both have, you know, this success in a kind of similar, you know, field is pretty interesting to watch too.
Yeah, when it comes to beside, we probably both at times put each other in the ahead column, which I think that there's just a mutual admiration society with AJ and I. And I think we go to each other with questions that maybe we wouldn't ask anybody else about life, about our work, about certainly being a dad. That comes up quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, I've known him obviously his whole life. I'm 2 years older than he is. Certainly the beside part about rooting for each other to do really well. It's just so gratifying to see all of the cool things that he's accomplished both as an athlete, and I've said it before, even while he was still playing, I think he's going to have a greater impact on the world post NFL days. And, you know, so far he's off to a pretty good start with what he's doing with Pat McAfee and the boys. So, I think when you trust that person with everything that you have, and you know that they care so much about you doing well, and they would do whatever it takes to help you do well. That's a nice thing. It's very similar to like hopefully your relationship with your wife. In my case, with my wife, and that's just neat to have. I realize not everybody has a brother like that or a best friend like that, and so I try to never take it for granted. We try our best in the midst of the chaos of us being dads with lots of kids to get together, to take my dad out golfing for Father's Day, all the type of stuff like that. And when we do, you know, I think, you know, when you have a good relationship, when you can spend the bulk of the time busting each other's balls, making fun of one another, your dad, all of that. That if we ever lost that, I would worry. But I think, you know, deep down it's because there's so much love and so much care. And certainly I think we both still have the feeling of we're going to get up each day and get after it, whether it's physically working out, which we both still do every day, or mentally, work-wise, like try to be as prepared as possible for whatever the endeavor is that day, and then get after it, and then be there for one another to say, hey, you know, that was amazing, this was awesome. Or if he has a question about, like, what should I ask Roger Goodell, you know, and I'll send a list of 20 things that I want to ask him, and maybe he uses one of them when they're doing the draft special, which they did this year. So I think it's cool stuff. It's cool stuff like that that I feel like very fortunate to have, and try to never take it for granted.
Yeah, it just hit me when you were talking about that beside and the idea of consistency. I've read that about him, and obviously it's a big part of your life too. Well, so while we're on that topic, this is one of the things I want to transition a little bit about, because you and I have talked probably about this more than anything, and that's how you balance some of the success and the responsibilities as a leader, also with family. And I'm going to set this up in a few ways. One, you know, it sounds weird to say, like, you know, we have a lot of younger advisors that are like 10 years behind me now. When I remember when I was in that phase 10 years ago, you know, and had young kids and the business is growing, that are always asking, like, hey, how do you balance that? And I think it's really important, right? say all the time, you would hate to gain the world and lose the most important things in your life. But when I was reading your book, and I think it's probably just the season of life I'm in that this really hit me. You know, we were saying my son just finished his freshman year of college, so he's out of the house now. My daughter just finished her sophomore year of high school, so we've got 2 years left with her. But you talk about the story you tell us, like how you were at, practice with one of the kids, kind of making small talk with another dad, kind of doing the same thing we all do where it's like, I got to run the kids here and here and here. And not complaining, but, maybe a little. It's like, I think every sports parent has had that conversation. But, and the dad said something. He said, well, what the heck? He didn't say heck, but he's like, what the heck else are you going to do? And kind of shared his story about like, I'm almost done with this season of life. And so maybe just talk about what you learned in that moment, that idea of enjoying the moment, not missing those things, not taking them for granted, just because I see so many people I'm talking to that I think are struggling with that right now.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you need to be smacked in the face by the random dad in the parking lot while you're listening to a podcast, waiting for your kid to be done with whatever sport they're playing. No, it was great perspective. And that's why, like, some of those people ahead of you, I think you can learn a lot from. Like, I haven't anyone leave the house yet to go to college, but I try to just remember, like, little things, like when kids always leave the lights on, And so I wrote this little post, private one for me and my wife, to say, we're going to miss when the lights aren't left on. Like, we're going to miss those days. And so let's instead of getting mad about like the electric bill or whatever, because they never turn the lights off, which I think parents can identify with, especially if you have lots of kids and they have friends over all the time, or whatever, the mess in the sink, like say like, well, we're going to miss this. We're going to miss this. And so that is a welcome reminder of, one, it makes me not as upset in the moment, but also it's just a reminder of like the little everyday things. Jerry Seinfeld talks a lot about like having his kids stay up way past their bedtime, eating Cheerios when it's 11 o'clock at night, like stuff like that. Like, you're going to miss those days. And so I think regularly saying we're going to miss this, or like doing the things that maybe they shouldn't do, like that, it's just a good reminder to stay present, to enjoy the current moments, because you're not going to have them all the time. Like, you're not going to have the messy house and the lights left on, because they won't be there. And that's, I think I'll miss that. And so to me, that's a regular saying, is like, I'm going to miss this. And so when I say that, it's like, make the most of the current day, whatever it may be, being the Uber driver, picking up a bunch of kids, having, like, my wife Miranda said this really cool thing. We had multiple girls having sleepovers one night. And so it was chaotic. It was very loud. But everybody's shoes were lined up right in our entryway. And there were like 12 pair of shoes lined up. And we're like, how cool is this, that we're able to provide a home, a place where we're going to feed 12 kids, both the dinner and breakfast in the morning, and it's going to be loud, and it's probably going to be a long night, and I know you're going to want to go to sleep early because you want to wake up early to work out, but how cool is this, that we have these 12 people that are currently calling our home a home, right? And so it's like just little moments to recognize how cool some of this stuff is, that we can provide that, and that our kids feel comfortable to do stuff like that, and that other kids' parents feel comfortable to have us do that. That's the type of stuff that I feel like we're going to miss. And so we're trying hard to live in those moments, even verbalize it and voice it as it's happening, of like, how cool is this? And then I think that makes you just more grateful, and it probably makes you a more enjoyable person to be around. And all of those are positives too. So really it's just about perspective. It's about gratitude, and it's about understanding like you're probably going to miss it. So let's like make the most of it today.
I'm going to ask you some practical things here, but I'll share, and this probably is going to sound cheesy when I say it, but, and I think it goes back to the season of life I'm in, but I'll listen to once a month. I make it a point. There's this Trace Atkins song called You're Gonna Miss This, which is just a like, as a parent, especially who sees kind of this end of our kids' time in our house coming, like I listen to that every month just to like recenter me on like, hey, don't take those things for granted, make sure that you're enjoying them. So if people haven't heard that song, you should go, especially if you're in season of life like we're in, with a bunch of teenagers. It's a great song to listen to. But let me go back to maybe a practical, any wisdom for people on how to balance these demands of like business leading, young family, just anything that you've seen be successful, or maybe even any practices that you have?
I don't know if mine are as helpful because I run my own business, so I make my own schedule. And so you do to a certain extent as well. But for example, like it's summer right now, and summer is a big deal for me to spend. Like we have so much fun at our pool that we go to. We take friends to it, and I still throw our youngest, our 9-year-old daughter Charlie, in the pool. We do flips. I'm the designated dad thrower of all the kids. Those days are gone for the older ones. Like I have that perspective. I remember when I did that for them, and I don't do that for them anymore. They're too big.
Can't throw the 17-year-old around.
I mean, I would do it, but it's just kind of weird at this point. And so like realizing the finiteness of certain parts of life help with perspective. So like I design my days to be able to get out of here earlier in the summer than I do when it's cold.
That's good. Yeah.
I work harder. I design my days to work, like, for example, the weekends, I'm fortunate, like my dad, to where I don't need an alarm clock to wake up quite early. Like, I get enough sleep. I do go to bed pretty early. Those nights with those big sleepovers are kind of an ordeal for me because I want to go to bed early and wake up early. But I'll do 2 to 3 hours of work on Saturday morning and Sunday morning before anybody else is awake. I've written full books utilizing those hours on the weekend. I do extra work when my family is asleep, so that I can be with them more when they're awake. And I'll do more work when it's cold than when it's warm so that we can spend more time together at the pool. Like these are tactical, real-life ways I've designed my years in advance, knowing how important some of these moments are, knowing we only get so many summers where I can be the designated dad thrower in the pool. And so I think you just have to get really intentional about how you design your days. And when you have asynchronous work, meaning work that you don't need other people to be a part of, to really do that during the hours when your family is not awake. And I've just been super intentional about that. Now it's like not even a thing. That's just what I do, and what I've done now for years. And I think that's been helpful. So figure out how you can schedule your day. Now, people like I work with clients who lead like thousands of people at Fortune 500 companies. It's tough. That's tough for them to leave at 3 o'clock and go to the pool. I like that. I get it. I get that that's hard, but as best you can, I would try to organize your days so that you can get work done while others are sleeping, especially the people you love the most, so that when they're awake, you can maybe spend more time with them.
Well, and I would say, I think a lot of the people that listen to this, especially the advisors with us, do own and run their own business, to where I think those are super practical things of like, if you have that, how can you schedule your day and even your year in a way that you take advantage of those? So that's good. Maybe a follow up in a similar way is, I think one of the things that's becoming more and more, I think, top of mind for leaders is the importance of like self-care. I think a lot of times as leaders, you're pouring so much into others that sometimes that comes at the detriment to your own health or personal growth and development. But any thoughts you have on just like as a leader, how important that is and how to prioritize that?
Figure out what you need. The 2 things that I need to take care of myself are I need to sweat and I need to walk. And so like a physical workout is a 7-day-a-week thing for me. My wife knows this. The people close to me know this. So like I need to push myself physically to feel alive. And so that is my version of self-care. And then I love taking my dog on walks. I do this at least once a day, usually 2 times a day. That's alone time to think, to reflect, to enjoy nature, to enjoy my dog. Like sometimes my wife comes with me at nighttime, and I really enjoy those long-form one-on-one conversations we get to have amidst all the other chaos happening. And so I think people have to do the work to figure out what that is for you. So in my case, it happens to be pushing myself physically and sweating, doing something hard, as well as then enjoying the nature of walking and thinking and slowing down and reflecting and sometimes doing that with the person I love the most. So figure out what that is for you, because without it, like that's my medicine. Like that's if I don't have it, I'm going to die. And so I know that, and the people closest to me know that. And so the days are designed to make sure that that happens. And some might say like, that's pretty selfish. You got to go to the gym every day. You got to walk there. Like that's alone time. It's like, well, without it though, I'm probably pretty useless for everybody else in my life. So it's like figuring out what is that for you. Hopefully it's something healthy. I would hope, not like, There are other vices. I
not
guess.
like
Hopefully it's
6 martinis after work.
Yeah.
Not the right approach.
Every once in a while, like, hey, like everything in moderation, including moderation, right? But
Yeah.
I think like I think you just got to figure out what that is for you, and then make sure that you prioritize it.
That's good. I want to talk just real quick about the idea of developing leaders and teams, and then we'll jump into some lightning round questions. But one of as a business scales and grows, and as you've talked to a lot of people, I think trying to identify those people within your organization that are going to be great leaders. And oftentimes, this is maybe how I want to ask you the question is like, and we're as guilty of it as anyone, is we tend to make the top performer, like we just tend to elevate them into the leadership role. I say all the time, I think that's one of the toughest transitions for a person to make. But are there any things that you've seen in like maybe how to identify who is the right person to lead? Sometimes that is the top performer, right? That is the person that should step into that. But you've been around a lot of high performing teams, captains on teams, like just any ideas around the selection process and maybe like what are the non-negotiables that you should be looking for in someone that you're going to elevate into a leadership role?
I think you got to simulate putting them in the actual role. I write about this in Welcome to Management, first book about like making that first jump from individual contributor to leading a team.
Yep.
And I think like, for example, I write about one of my buddies named Brent Shears in that book, who I did it with him and many others, but Brent went on to be a great senior leader and is currently to this day. But in that case, he was number one sales performer. Had said he wanted to manage his own team, and but just because he was number one or said he wanted it didn't mean he should do it. So we would find ways to simulate him actually doing my job. So he would run team meetings, he would plan them and run them. I would be in them and just sit there and watch and take notes and then give him feedback. We would do one-on-one coaching where he would coach actually one of his teammates, which is kind of a hard thing to do, but it put in the position of coaching. So he would listen to their calls, and then he would provide feedback, and I would be there the whole time to like coach the coach. And so after doing a lot of simulation, and he's just one example, we did this with many people, but doing a lot of simulation of the actual role or doing it, he learned, wait, do I actually want to do this? Which in his case, it was yes. As well as I learned, is he going to be good? Can I refer him to be a future manager? And in his case, again, that was yes. And so any way you can try to give your people a taste of what it's actually like before they are fully the one to do it, I think is good. My dad gave me that advice early on. He's like, simulate as much as possible, role play, actually have them do the job, run little projects, do tests where they're in charge, like put them in positions to be the leader where it's still kind of low stakes, meaning if they mess up, like it's not the end of the world, but you can get a good feel that they're going to be good at it. Simulate as much as possible of putting those people in those roles. And then you get a sense of one, if they like it, and two, if they show like they're adept at figuring some things out. They're not going to be perfect, but I think that was one of the key things that I did and why I loved having our team be known as a place where people went to get promoted, because we did a lot of work prior to them interviewing for the role to make sure that they were a good fit for that job.
That's good. The simulation, I think, is important. We see it a lot, and people who listen to this have heard me say this a lot. A lot of our advisors, as they're bringing on other advisors that they're trying to develop, I say you just can't. There's no substitution for the reps, right? Like you've got to find ways to get them reps, and those don't always have to be live reps. It's why football teams practice, right? Like you practice. So the more you can simulate and find them ways to get those reps, the better they're going to be. So flip that a little to the idea of as you build out a team, and you've been on some super high performing teams. Family's been on some high performing teams. Are there any common characteristics you see of the best performing teams?
Usually player-led, meaning the players hold the standard more so than just the coach. I've been on losing teams too, and that was one of the factors that didn't exist on the losing teams, where the players did not hold high standards themselves. So I feel like player-led teams, those are usually empowered by great coaching, was one of the biggest differentiators between the winning teams and the losing teams, is they held themselves to really high standards, and they held others to those high standards as well, as opposed to depending on a coach to yell and scream or to get people to try to play better. And the same thing happened when I've led teams and sales and different parts of businesses. is when you got people who are so bought in that they're now taking the lead on holding themselves first accountable as well as then others. That to me is like, that's the magic, that's the juice. If you can figure out a way to create an environment where people are willing to hold each other to really high standards, I think you got a good shot then of things going well.
Love it. Okay. I know I had you on here for a while. Let's hit some lightning round questions here at the end that I just love to get everyone's perspective on. First one, starting with COVID, I said every leader I feel like started reevaluating things after COVID, but is there one lesson that you learned coming through that you would carry forward for the rest of your career life?
From COVID?
Yeah.
Get together in person.
Yep.
The world's going in the opposite direction. Getting together in person, I just did this with my learning leader circles, and it's just amazing to see people sharing a meal, doing improv exercises together, hugging and smiling, and I just was watching the videos from my video team from that event, and so getting together in person is a superpower, and people are I think people want it, but it's not happening as much as it could.
It's interesting. I said, I'm coming off just like a few days ago was with this mastermind group, and that was the conversation, just how important that human connection and getting together in person has become. Like
no substitute.
It's funny to hear. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Second thing, you talked about Jim Collins. I think he made this kind of quote famous, but what is the one thing that you've done that has graduated you from being good to great?
Oh man. I mean, I think curiosity is a skill, and it's not a skill that I possessed in my younger years of life, and one I've really developed. And the more curious I've got, the better my life has gotten. And so I'd say curiosity has been the biggest difference in my life over the past decade.
I think that thing with curiosity too is it's one of those where you never really settle or become complacent if you're always curious, right? You're always like seeking. So I think that's
never arrived, always becoming mindset that JJ Redick talked about on my show. Like that's the big idea, right? This idea of never arriving, I think, and having this always becoming mindset has been huge.
And how about, I don't know if it's official, and I don't know when this will launch, but I think he may be the next Lakers head coach, or at least I saw that. So
he's in the running, but I think they're also going after UConn's coach, it sounds like, as of today too. So we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. So, okay, third question. Is there something that you are doing to drive your own personal growth this year that's maybe new or different that you're excited about?
This goes along with the COVID. So, when possible, if a podcast guest is open to doing it in person, I'm just going to fly to them and do it. So I'm flying to Austin, Texas next week to interview Ryan Holiday again. And I have other ones lined up. So I think when possible, I want to develop more connection by being in person with people. It's not always possible just based on my schedule and theirs, but I think that's a new question I'm asking. Hey, can we do this in person? I'll come to you, and that's I feel fortunate to be in that position, but I'm excited to do more of those.
That's cool. How many times have you interviewed Ryan now? I feel like I've seen him on there quite a few times.
My 8th.
Nice.
Yeah.
And this is a shameless plug for one of Ryan's books, but it'll transition me to our fourth question. We were talking about young dads, young families, some of that earlier. His daily dad devotional is incredible. Everyone should get that if they don't have it, which is a transition to my fourth question, but can't be one of your books, although Learning Leader, so many of your books are incredible, but what is the one book that you've recommended most to other leaders?
The Wright Brothers by David McCullough. I live in Dayton, Ohio. Those guys are from Dayton, Ohio. Their bicycle shop is about 15 minutes down the road from where I'm standing right now. Talk about curiosity. I mean, that came from their dad. They grew up in a home full of books, and they were encouraged to follow their curiosities with great rigor as well. And that led from a couple of guys and their sister who were running a bicycle shop to build something that eventually flew, which is insane to think about at the time, and people thought of them as that. But that book is so good when it comes to just people getting after it and being resilient and figuring it out and testing it and then seeing bad things happen. I mean, people died on their test flights, like a lot of rough things, and they just kept going and they kept going and they kept going. So, and David McCullough is one of the greatest storytellers of all time. And so maybe nobody better suited to tell the story of the Wright brothers than that guy. And that's a book that I think is reread by me every single year.
It's a great one. I've not read it and not heard that one before. So obviously your local connection's great. Okay, final question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best is hard, but I mean, I'll revert to my dad. My freshman year of high school, my brother was in 7th grade. It looked like things were going well for us athletically. And he said, there are stories that's starting to be written about me in the paper. And so that was kind of cool, like the actual physical paper, which doesn't quite exist as much anymore, but that's shifted to online. But anyway, he said, hey, people are they're gonna write good things about you. They're going to write bad things about you. The key is for you guys to stay composed, to stay poised, and to remember what has gotten you to this point, and that's the work. And so regardless of what anybody says or what anybody writes, you focus on consistently doing the work, and I think you're going to be okay. And I think that's a big thing I think about now, whether things are good or bad, is not to get too high, not to get too low, but to remember that it's the work. The work is what has caused us for good things to happen, and to be consistently to show up to do that work. And so I've never really forgotten it, and I don't even know if he remembers telling us that, because he probably told us that many times, but that was a moment for me when I started getting a little bit of public recognition, where he was, I think, initially saying, like, don't get a big head.
Yeah.
Chill out here, dude. Because I was a pretty arrogant, young, cocky quarterback. And that has, I think, served me well to focus on the work.
Great advice to end and send everyone off of this episode with. So, Ryan, enjoyed the time so much. I appreciate you doing it. I talked a little bit about your podcast, but can you just share all the ways people should be following along? Go listen to that, your books. Just give them all the different ways they can follow what you're doing.
Yeah, learningleader.com is the home for everything. Podcast is called The Learning Leader Show. If you search that in any podcast player, you'll see it. It's my favorite thing to do. Have deep, long-form conversations with people far wiser than me and try to learn from them. And, the books, everything else has stemmed off of the foundational thing of my business, which is my podcast, The Learning Leader Show. So thank you, man. I really appreciate your prep, too. Like, not many people know and can recite specific passages from books. So I don't take that lightly, Cody, that you did the work, like did the actual prep, and it shows. So I think it's worth it to publicly acknowledge that you did it, because some people try to fake their way through that stuff, and it is very evident that is not you. Well, that's not how you go about it, and I really appreciate that.
It helped that I'd read your book, so so I mean, not just shamelessly plugging your book. I've read the book, and I highly recommend it to people. And I think a big part of this, and I say all the time at the end, is like, our world needs more great leaders. Obviously, this was a whole episode dedicated to that. It's what you've kind of committed your life to. So people go share this episode with others, and more than anything, put these principles into play and go be a great leader. So thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me.